Good morning, folks. Rick Spain here with Infinite Grace again with another thought and in a three-part series here. I want to start out thanking Philip Reed and Reed Publications, the Weatherford Daily News, and all those that he represents. That they are our sponsor for this, and we certainly appreciate what they do. Thank you, thank you. Hope everything's going well with you. But this is the third part in a series we've done that from the verse in Psalms 5 and 12. It says, "For you bless the righteous, O Lord, and you surround them with favor as with a shield." So, we tend to live our life in categories. We have a work category, a rest or weekend category, a fun place, a not so fun place. There's time to celebrate, and then there's a time to not celebrate. A time when you're full of hope, and another when hope is lost. With all these thoughts, we think, and the Lord wants to bless us. Yes, He does. So, when we look at this, time is the revealer of all truth. Why is that? Because it's not what we think's going to happen, it's what actually happens after the dust is settled. It proves this time factor. It proves what you know instead of what you think that you know. See, a lot of us we live life on what we think we know, and then life hits us, and it exposes these fallacies that say maybe you don't know as much as you think. I love this thought that I learned several years ago, actually decades ago, from a man named Watchman Nee. He was a Chinese missionary during the time where communism took over, so he spent half of his life in prison and the other half of his life telling people about Jesus. And so they'd tell him, "You can't do that, Watchman." And so he'd keep on doing it, throw him in prison, and he'd do his time, he'd get out and do the same thing. So he took a lot of time, spent a lot of time on thinking, on figuring things out, on talking with God and God talking with him. The concept that Watchman Nee came up with is that you can have a thought and think that you know without actually living it in your life. And so what this does is it makes you think that you know something when actually the test comes and it proves that you don't. So this is what I'm talking about this morning. So the concept is, you might think you know something, but if you're not living it, you don't actually know it. And so this is what we're tackling this morning. So the true picture of life is measured not by what's going on around you, but what is going on inside of you. And time and experience uncovers this reality. So there was a time where the medical professionals got together and they were examining, so what's the cause of most of our hospital visits? Why are people getting sick? And so they did a study, and they come to realize that stress was the number one cause of sickness for the hospital visits. And so they thought, we got to do something about this. I mean, that's something that we can do something about, is stress. And so they got together with the psychologists, and the psychologist says, "Oh yeah, we've been studying this. We got people that think the world's going to fall on top of them, and then they got other people think that they're just going to fly away in the distance and everything's going to be all right." And so we've been working on this for years. And so they all got together, and they brought the scientists in there, and they said, "We need you to develop some kind of a theory on how we can correct this, to make people more healthy." And so the scientist says, "We can do that." And so what they did is the scientists get together and they said, "Well, we need to get two of the subjects, one on the optimistic side, one on the pessimistic side." And they thought about it for a second and thought, well, you know what? If we get adults, they already have preconceived ideas and all this. It's just, let's find a couple of kids, And so they did. They found these two kids, one that's relatively pessimistic, and the other overly optimistic. And so they take this pessimistic child and they put this kid in a room full of brand new toys. And they come back an hour later and this kid is crying, broken toys everywhere. And they stop the kid and says, what's going on? And the child says, there's so many new toys in here, I don't know which one to play with. And they just shook their heads. So they got the optimistic kid. And they got this room and they stuck this kid in a room full of horse manure with a little shovel. And so they come back an hour later, and this kid is just as happy as can be, just shoveling that manure over his shoulder. And so they stopped the child and said, What are you so happy about? He said, well, there's so much of this stuff in here, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. That, my friends, is what we deal with. So just like we have categories in life, we also develop concepts. If I can be more positive, or I need to be more real about life. In the process of how to act and react, we can lose ourselves in the realities of life. The optimistic view places the problem somewhere out there in the distance that will magically reconcile itself, while the pessimistic view places the issues directly on the carrier, and you are the carrier. Life can be a mess, and the challenges in life can be overwhelming, without a doubt. There has to be a middle ground where we can at least survive. Something that can simplify life's demands, to bring peace in the midst of the turmoil. That's the key. Simplify the process. Remember, the last 2 weeks we had come up with two simple conclusions in life. Two simple conclusions. Number one is that God has a plan. And it's not somewhere out there in the distance. It's not subjective to whether this happens or that happens. It's not subjective to whether you feel good or you don't feel good, whether this person agrees with you or not. His plan is the same from the beginning all the way to the end. You remember what the plan is? His plan is Jesus. Jesus is the plan, because he knew that we could not survive without his plan. So that was number one. So when we think about that, the plan that God came up with, does it remove all the problems? Absolutely not. But it gives you the ability to deal with the problems. So what was the second thing we learned? The second part that we uncovered is in the thought of what God expects out of us. The common thought says if we do better, then God will give us the answer we want. So we spend time doing this good thing and putting our perfect mass with the expectation that God is counting all of our good efforts that puts us in his good graces. When life doesn't turn out the way we expect, what do? We blame him. The truth is, we can never do good enough. We can never reach that level where God owes us something in return. I want you to know something. He knows this. It's not like he's holding it over our head. He knows this. That's why he came up with the plan. That's where the plan comes in. He knew we couldn't do it, and so he sent Jesus so that we could receive his plan, what Jesus did. And so, because he knows this is why he made it simple. See, God doesn't make it complicated. We do. We complicate the process. In spite of everything around you, you can do this one simple thing. And that was the second thought. The second thing we do is trust Him. Trust Him in His plan. So if we don't connect to His plan, then we're going to want Him to connect to our plan. So let me talk to you about that for just a second. When life is going contrary to your ideas and your head is spinning by what's going on around you, you can trust Him to bring the answers. The answer may not look like your mind is conceived, but I can assure you, after all the dust is settled, it will be better than you expected. And you might say, well, Rick, you're not living in my life. I trusted God and this happened and that happened and it's not any better. If it's not better, it's not over. Keep on trusting. So the key thought in this third part is keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. When your plan is going every direction but up, remember His plan. Jesus didn't just go through hell to leave you in hell. Remember His one requirement: trust Him. When trust doesn't mix with the circumstances, put the circumstances aside. Don't just trust Him in the circumstances, trust Him in spite of the circumstances. If you take these two simple steps in your walk in life, it will not remove all the crap in your life, but you can take the little shovel that He provides, and I guarantee you will find a pony in there somewhere. Have a great day.